I rang my children this morning and I said, I'm at a conference, and I said, guess who's here? I said, Costa's here. I said, who? I said, the gnome off Dirt Girl. They said, oh, Dad, get a photo, get a photo.
Yeah.
I must admit, I love Dirt Girl as well. Welcome, everyone. My name's Brendan. I'm the Cultural Educator and the Cultural Advisor for Metropolitan Local Aboriginal Land Council in Sydney, and our role as Aboriginal Land Councils under the Land Rights Act in the 90s. We are the cultural authority and the guardians and custodians of land within our boundaries. Guardians and custodians, not traditional owners. Before I welcome you to country, I share just a very brief history and timeline of country. For Aboriginal people, botanical gardens, where Captain Cook landed, for us that's ground zero. In less than 50 years of the invasion, 80% of our people was wiped out on the east coast and within Sydney. 80% in less than 50 years. It didn't take long for the English to realise that the smallpox and flu was absolutely devastating for us. And so they used chemical warfare in deliberately infecting blankets and clothing and handing that out to community. The first to go were our elders, so there went our wisdom and knowledge, and the next to go were the young people, so there went the future. So traditional owner, that definition of traditional owner is must have an ongoing, continual connection to country, which unfortunately was severed when Cook landed. There were two mistakes that Cook actually made, and not a lot of people know about the first mistake he made. The second mistake was coming here, and the first mistake was when he sailed through the heads. He sailed through the heads, and let's not forget that Cook and his crew were sailors. Not all of them were sailors, of course, but the English were sailors. They sailed through the heads, and as they've come through the heads, Cook got out his telescope and he's looked across at a beach, and he's called out to Sir Joseph Banks. He says, I say, Joseph, come hither. And Joseph toddled over and pulled out his little telescope, and he looked at the same beach, and he's gone, I say, they're quite manly. Manly Beach. That's how Manly got its name, because the Aboriginal people over there were manly, running around naked on the beach. That's how it got its name. If you don't believe me, Google it. It may not have happened the way I've said it happened, but I dare you to prove me wrong. If we fast forward that timeline just a little bit from Cook landing, we had a whole period and an era in country of slaughters and massacres on country. There were 500 of my family members that were slaughtered, men, women and children, just for water, for cattle to drink. If we fast forward that timeline a little bit, we had a whole period of kidnapped generation, or the stolen generation. I don't like to use the word stolen, I prefer kidnapped generation. If we fast forward that timeline a little bit, 1950s and 1960s, my people came under the Flora and Fauna Act. So we weren't even considered human, 1950s and 1960s. We are the world's oldest living culture. 1970s, late 1960s, we're finally able to vote. Woohoo! Not much has changed for my people. We're still the highest rate of incarceration. We're still the highest rate of removal for our children. And we still have third world conditions in a lot of our communities. 1971, I was born at Crown Street Women's Hospital, Surrey Hills in Sydney. And that's the last time that I ever felt my mother's touch. I'm the second generation of my family that's been taken. My mother, aunties and uncles were taken. I'm one of 10. 7 years ago I found out I'm one of 10 siblings that have been removed. And for me, I've born and bred here in Sydney. And once I had that removal, there was a lot of things that were also taken away. My connection to country, my connection to language, my connection to culture, my identity. So for over 40 odd years, I never knew who I was and where I came from. And for First Nations people, for blackfellas, there's two questions we ask each other upon meeting. Who's your mob and where you come from? I couldn't answer that question for a very long time. I grew up not black enough to play with the black kids and not white enough to play with the white kids. So I copped it from both sides of the fence. I gave it back on both sides of the fence as well. I've had a lot of fun with ignorance. I grew up at a time where the colour of my skin dictated who I was and where I came from. And I'll share a few examples. At the age of 6 months of age, I used to run away from home, and the police would pick me up and bring me back home. On one occasion, they took me to a house 5 houses up the road because that's where an Italian family was living. They thought I was a little Italian boy. I went to primary school where it was compulsory for everyone to learn Arabic. So then I got the Middle East and Lebanese label stuck on there as well. I lived in Newtown for a while. There's a great community in Newtown. And I remember the old fellas coming up and talking to me in their language, and I'd say, I don't know what you're saying, mate. They'd say, I'm sorry, you look like you come from Cyprus. And then I lived in Marrickville for a while, and there's a Maltese community, and the same thing happened there. They talked to me in the language, I don't know what you're saying, sorry, you look like you come from Malta. And this happened all my life, and unfortunately the only ones that ever got the label right was the police. And one day I was thinking about it, if I was to go and rob a bank, would the description of the bank robber be Middle Eastern European? Would I be able to get away with it? Because I know there's no one that can run as fast as a black fella can run. I never robbed the bank. I did think about it for a while, but I'll share this brief history on country, about country, because when you have a welcome to country, I just ask everyone, have a little bit of thought and reflect on what we've been through to get to where we are today. Because 10 years ago in Australia, we would never have had a welcome to country. We would never have had an acknowledgement of country. So for me, it shows as a nation we're moving forward towards recognition and acknowledging First Nation people. We can move a lot bloody faster, but at least we're moving forward. So the land that we're on is Gadigal land. And Gadigal is one of 29 clans which make up the Eora Nation. That word Eora in Gadigal language means men's country. At the Conservatory of Music in Sydney there, that's actually built on top of Bora ground for men, kangaroo and dingo dreaming. So Eora means men's country. The boundaries for the Eora Nation start from the ocean, and they're surrounded by 3 of Australia's most beautiful rivers. And unfortunately, like a lot of our waterways and rivers, neglected rivers. We have the Hawkesbury River, we have the Nepean River, and we have the Georges River. And in between those 3 mighty and beautiful rivers, we have 29 clans which make up the Eora Nation. And the name of the clan that we're gathered on here this morning is Gadigal. So first and foremost, on behalf of those Gadigal ancestors, because their spirit is still in the land and the water, on behalf of Metropolitan Aboriginal Land Council as the cultural authority, and on behalf of myself, welcome everyone here this morning. It's always an honour for me to be able to perform that ceremony on country again. We've been welcoming each other to country for thousands and thousands of years. I say over 250,000 years BC, and the BC stands for before Cook. So for me, performing Welcome to Country is part of that revitalising of culture back on country. And that's what country needs, that's what country misses. So once again, welcome to Gadigal country. The other hat I've got on today is to do your smoking ceremony. Now, our smoking ceremonies are a ceremony. We do our smoking ceremonies from the beginning of life right through to the end of life. As soon as our babies are born, we bless them through the smoke. So they get the smell of country on their body. And every living thing on country knows that those babies are connected to country. We do our smoking ceremonies during life. Different plants have different healing properties. And we do our smoking ceremonies at the end of life, what we call our sorry business. The ceremony starts before the leaf is picked. Before the leaf's picked from the tree, and it's not just any tree, it's a certain tree and leaf that I use. Different clans will use different plants. Before the leaf is picked, there's a song that's sung to the tree. And that song, that prayer, and that magic goes into the tree, goes into the leaves. When I burn the leaves, that releases that song, that prayer, and that magic. And that's our smoking ceremony. Normally I'd get people to come up and wash yourselves with the smoke, because it's a shower for the inside of your body. The smoke absorbs things that we can't see. It absorbs all that negative energy. But can't get everyone to come up, so I'm going to get enough smoke just to fill the room, don't you worry. As much to the delight of ICC. I always traditionally light my fires with the big lighter. I say, you'd be surprised actually. I turn up at some events, and these events organisers, some of them, not saying today, but some of them get a bit anxious and nervous because the big gig's coming up, and they'll ask me, are you going to rub the sticks together? I say, no, I'm not. Have you heard of evolution? And I still hunt kangaroo and emu, except I use a Toyota and a rifle, and sometimes I buy my bush tucker online. So I'm going to like this, only get that smoke, and then I'll walk around the room and try and get as much smoke as I can. Once again, thank you for having me. Welcome to Gadigal land. I'd love to stay, but unfortunately, I've got to pay a white fella by the name of Wilson for parking on my own land. And he's not... actually today I don't have to. I've got the free pass. It's even better. Wilson's not getting any money out of me today. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Gadigal. I think Costa's going to come back up, and he's going to do an interpretive dance of everything I've just said. A lot of the times I get asked, what plants are you burning? And normally I'll say, none your business. I wouldn't be able to get away with that in here because you all know your plant species.